Hey folks, I just wanted to give you a sneak peek at this special spread that I developed for the year ahead. I'm a believer that so much variables are at play in our lives that it's hard to predict or forecast a whole year ahead of time, but I do think 6 months is a reasonable amount of time. So that's what I'm offering right now if you're interested. And I do this via video or writing, and I also do this either with Sibylla or tarot. But in this example, I'm going to use Sibylla since it's just a little more unusual right now. So I'm just going to actually draw a quick question and do a demo for you. I think this is you could do this generally if you wanted to, and it could be each the energy around each month in the next 6 months that will be a major factor for that month, or you could focus it on work or a relationship, or sort of explore the trajectory of something over the course of a 6 month span, which to me I think is the most useful way to use this. So that's what I recommend. So I'll just do this for a question about someone's relationship. They're just at the verge of a new relationship. They just started and they want to know what the relationship looks like for the next 6 months. Sort of starting, beginning of the year through the middle of the year. So it's 3 cards per month for 6 months. And I'll just shuffle and draw and talk you through how I might go through this for a real reading. So I like to draw it kind of in a little bit of a fan, because the months really sort of don't necessarily interact with each other as much as the cards within a month. So this would be January. Here we have February. March. April. May. And June. Can you see all of that? You can see pretty much all of it. All right. So the way that this gets read is each month is a column. So here's January. So what I would do is explore how the relationship, with the energy of the relationship, or what will happen in the relationship theoretically, based on the energy that's already at work right here at the end of the year. So January, February, March, April, May, June. Sorry about that. I had kind of a coughing fit. It's that time of year too, the end of the year. So we're having this sense of maturity. We have longing for something to be more than it is, more mature than it is. So it's a new relationship. We want it to be more, you know, developed than it has been, mostly because of our ego. You know what I mean? So the dominant energy in January is going to be this feeling of like wanting to push the relationship to a more mature place than it is, because that suits our sense of our sense of self in a more fulfilling way. But that's just about ego. So we have to be careful in the month of January, because ego could really push us to try to activate the relationship more quickly than it wants to be activated. For February, we've got the Merchant reversed, we've got Reunion reversed, and we've got Hope reversed. So I think that what this says is, if we don't monitor our energy and our desire to push our ego and push the relationship further, the demand for intimacy may actually cause a sense of separation, and we may find ourselves feeling somewhat hopeless about the relationship. So, if this energy plays out, actually, what may happen is that the relationship could fizzle. Um, the demand for intimacy to be, to be more intimate than it is, may actually cause a breakup. So that's something to be aware of. But I think it's what's interesting is that the root here tells us so much about what can be done to avoid that. Now, as we head into March, we've got the child reversed, we've got the Lord reversed, and we've got faithfulness. So what's interesting here, again, we get a tie back to this issue of maturity. There is sort of a sense of innocence, I'm going to choose to say, but potentially naivete that gets us drawn in by someone who seems like they're more in control, more in charge than they are, who's loyal but not necessarily the best for us, who's sort of not quite what they appear to be. They are a little bit naive and a little bit more out of control than what is necessary for us, but they are loyal. Now, this feels like new energy, which may suggest that this relationship is ended here, and a new person comes in who maybe not exactly what we wanted, but is faithful. So January, February, March, April. April looks overall like a good month, although it is really about finding faith and happiness and sort of good fortune in things that don't have to do necessarily with romance. This is about friends. So April's going to be a time where the kind of fortune that we were hoping for isn't necessarily what we're getting. It's really going to be about what joy in relationship that we find. The the root of it is actually in friendship. It's not so much in romance. Um, Sorry, May. It's hard to remember them. I'm not terrible. So we have jealousy. We've got the servant or service reversed, and we have gifts reversed. So there's a sense that in May, all of the kind of focus on friendship turns around and makes you realize what you lack from the romantic place. You know what I mean? And you may find yourself sort of beholden to wanting something that isn't there for you. And that may make you feel really jealous of what other people have, because you find yourself sort of beholden to the energy of something that's just not what's meant to be at that moment, and that could make you feel really, May could be kind of a tough month if you allow yourself to remain in service to something that is just, it's not in the cards at that moment. As we get to June, that could continue, you know what I mean? Because the energy here, this sense of needing and demanding from life what it's not going to give you, gives you a sense of feeling outside and alone and lost. And it makes you sort of potentially not feel great, or be drawn to things that don't make you feel great, and that can make you sort of be less disciplined, in your approach to things. So, as a forecast, this suggests really needing to like look at January, right? Look at this energy here and trying to force things into a state that they're not in, really kind of sets a downward spiral into play. And that could be avoided by just letting things be and allowing ourselves just to experience what needs to be experienced. We don't need to force the hand. We don't need to make anything, our desire for something to advance more quickly is natural and it's human, but we can't let that push us, into we can't force things into, boxes that they don't want to fit in yet, and we can't make something develop more quickly than it wants to. So, as a forecast, this may not be the message we want, right? But actually, this is a really helpful forecast, because what it tells us right at the beginning of the 6 month period is that here's something we have to look out for. If we don't look out for it, and if we're not capable of sort of reining in what we're risking in early in the year, what we're going to find is that there's going to be kind of a bit of a spiral, that, at least for the first 6 months of the year, makes us not feel our best, and makes us feel like we've lost out, and um, we're a little out of our control. So, but if we can address this, whether or not the relationship lasts, at least we know we did the work that we needed to do to avoid setting us down this path. So, this isn't, the reading anyone wants from a relationship standpoint, but it's actually the best kind of reading, right? Because it shows us where we could fall down and what the consequences of that will be. But if we can avoid this, if we can sort of know that this is going to be a factor, the desire to push something further than it wants to go, we actually could avoid all of this. That's really not what we want out of a relationship. You know what I mean? Like, sort of not pushing it further than we want it to go could actually lead to this, this set of cards changing, right? So if we're sort of gentle with the relationship, and if we let it grow at its own rate, we don't continue a trend of demanding more intimacy that leads to a breakup here. And so this, and then that changes this, and that changes this, and that changes this. So, overall, I think that this is useful, if not the anticipated outcome. But again, we have something we can avoid doing, and I think that makes this helpful. This sort of month of March here is interesting. I think that it so strongly ties back into this month. Is just, I'm just going to be really blunt. There's a sense of immaturity in this month, and as I reevaluate, it's like our faithfulness to, our own sort of sense of like what things should be, and our lack of willingness to let things go and grow as they want to. I honestly feel like this March row ties so strong into forcing things to be what they're not. So again, I would say that if this can be avoided, right, if we can be more gentle and generous with a relationship early on, we may not have this sort of sense of separation in February. Um, we may be able to sustain it in March. When March comes around, as sort of spring starts, we're going to have to again resist that temptation to not let our more naive and our more base instincts take over. We want to make sure that our loyalty is to people and not to our feelings about the way things should go. So, March, April, yeah, April looks like a good month overall. I mean, it's definitely going to be filled with friends and sort of good stuff. You know what I mean? Regardless, but yeah. So just in summary, to sort of summarize everything I've said, the real sort of risk happens really early in the year, when we find ourselves wanting to push the relationship further than it's ready to go. And that can downward spiral. So if we can avoid that, if we can really be gentle and generous with it, then we may be able to avoid some things. As spring starts again, you may face those same demons, and they may need to be conquered again. Just sort of looking at this from like a more traditional spread. Think about friends, and think about support systems that can help you as those demons start to creep up again for you, because that really can help you sustain it. If it's something that wants to be sustained, and that's the other thing. In a relationship, we're only one part of the equation, so we have to factor that into. But that's that. So that's just a quick sort of forecast for the first 6 months. And then, if this were a real reading and you wanted to, you could come back in 6 months, or, in sort of April and June, May and June, gosh, and and see where things are going. Or, if January comes along and you manage to avoid this, we could reforecast, the next 6 months. So I think that there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of pliability in a reading like this, and that's why I think they're useful. Some people don't like, as readers, to do predictive readings. I think that there are times where they're useful, and I think readings like this can be. And I did draw these cards randomly, but I'm really happy that they came out in this way, because I think it shows us that sometimes we don't get the message we're hoping for, but it does show us like why what we're hoping for doesn't happen. You know what I mean? And in this case, we had a very clear column that in the beginning of the year that said this is going to be a risk for you, and if you don't address that risk, it's gonna escalate or de-escalate in this case, in terms of the relationship. So that's up in the shop right now, and it's available. And again, I can do this with Sibylla and Tarot. I could also theoretically do this with something like the Rackham Oracle, but and then, so today is Black Friday, and all my readings and coachings are on sale, 15% off. So now's a good time if you want to book stuff for your friends for the holidays, for Christmas gifts or holiday gifts or Yule gifts. I don't normally like doing the commercial stuff, but I really am a fan of this spread. And I think it could be useful for a lot of folks. So I hope those of us in the United States, or those of you in the United States, had a great Thanksgiving. And if you're out shopping, I hope you're safe and you don't get any fist fights. And I hope you take care. Be good.